2 U.S. deportation flights have just landed in Guatemala as part of President Trump's ongoing immigration crackdown. CNN's senior national correspondent David Clover joins us now from Guatemala City. So, David, what do we know about these flights?
Hey, Pamela, yeah, you're right. The one that just touched down, I'm going to be very careful what we're showing here because some of the folks have asked that we not show their faces. So sometimes you'll see the camera go down to our feet. But let me give you a sense of the process because you saw them perhaps stepping onto the tarmac, and now they're at the space where you can see these folks in yellow vests who are registering these folks back into Guatemala. So for many of them, it's been years since they've lived here, and now they're trying to figure out the reintegration process. And we're just going to be careful with faces here too. But let me just show you over here. This is where they're walking up and getting any sort of necessities, some snacks, toiletries. They have everything from Crocs to t-shirts, shoelaces, because if you notice, many of them here, I'll show you this right down here, he doesn't have shoelaces on because that's part of the standard procedure for security to remove anything that could be used as a weapon or self-harm. And they've even got toothpaste and some other snacks. I see them putting their fingerprints down, and then a lot of them come over this way and they start charging their phones. I'll just move these sticks over here so you can come around here, Jerry. And that's when they're able to then try to finally reconnect with relatives and loved ones who might come to this space to pick them up. Now, as they're being registered in by, you can see this is some of the organizations that are helping in trying to get them sorted and essentially processed back into Guatemala. They'll then come over to this porch and they've got some of their belongings here. I mean, I can see a guitar case. You can see these are almost like potato sacks, Pamela, that have some of their belongings and stapled together, and then inside I've seen everything from Wawa wrappers to CVS receipts, so things that were just in their pockets that they emptied before boarding.
Wow, and you also spoke to the vice president, right, of Guatemala? What did she say?
So the vice president welcomed this group here. It's interesting because they leave the U.S. as criminals because they illegally entered, and so that's now why they're being deported back here to Guatemala. And the vice president made a point to say that obviously this is a complicated situation. She tried to redirect it mostly to the migrants and what their situation is, but I asked about relations between the U.S. and Guatemala, especially for what we saw in the past 24 hours with Colombia. And she said, look, that's Colombia's situation. The U.S. and Guatemala have their own relationships, so she was trying to be very careful in how she navigated that. I also asked, as we kind of walk around here, I want to give you another sense of some of this. I also asked about what's different essentially between what happened the past 4 years under President Biden and what's changed since under President Trump. As far as the numbers and the capacity of folks who have been deported, that has not changed according to the vice president. That's still the same for what we saw under President Biden. In fact, in some cases, it's even gone down a little bit. What has changed, though, Pamela, is the use of military flights, and that began last Thursday here to Guatemala, and it's continuing with another military aircraft that will bring another round of deportees here to this airport in about 2 or 3 hours from now.
Yeah, I think that's really important context, that there hasn't been some big change other than, as you point out, the use of military flights. Again, we'll see how this plays out.
My next guest is an Illinois state senator representing the 1st District in Chicago. Javier Cervantes joins us now. Thanks so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me this morning.
So you hear our reporter there in Guatemala City saying that Guatemalan authorities say that actually the volume of deportation flights have not changed. The kind of flight, they're now military flights, have changed, but not the volume. I wonder, from your perspective, what's different in your view about how these raids are playing out?
Well, Jim, our communities are just, they're living in fear right now. I think the most people are being affected and are soft targets. Working class people, children. You just saw earlier today, they just knocked on this man's door and they just took and his family now is suffering and don't know what to do. So that's what's really happening here. It's a lot of fear going on in our communities. We just recently had a scare in one of our schools, in our Chicago Public Schools, where we thought that ICE had shown up. Tonight it was secret. It was a secret agent agency, but you know, people are just very scared right now.
Yeah. What should, in your view, be the response of city officials to this? Should they resist? Should they just stand back? Or should they be taking part?
Well, what we're trying to do our best is get the word out about the laws that we have in Illinois, the protection that we do, educate our communities, and try to be as helpful as we can to help these families out. So it's a lot of what we're doing. So right now we're trying to help people, and we're trying to make people understand what their rights are. I think that's where we really come in. It's really educating our communities.
Mm-hmm. There is concern that migrants who came in, let's talk about one, say, who came in or attempted to come in through legal asylum points of entry, asylum process, as that becomes harder, that they might then seek to come illegally. Is that a concern that you have? That in other words, the flows won't stop, but they'll just be redirected in effect to illegal entry?
Well, yes. I mean, people want that American dream. My mother came into this country, undocumented once upon a time, and she could have come back to Mexico, but she decided that she wanted to stay here in this country, even after my dad passed away, and try to give me that American dream. And now I'm here now. So a lot of people want to come to this country, and unfortunately, with what's happening now, they're going to do what they can to try to live that American dream that we have here.
How do you believe the Democratic Party should be responding to this? There have been stories about a disagreement among lawmakers here, both in the Senate and the House side. We saw some Democratic senators, particularly from border states, vote yes on the Laken Riley Act, and the response from the more progressive wing of the party was that this is you're going too far here. We need to have some sort of opposition strategy. What do you think Democratic lawmakers should be doing, short of saying we support illegal immigration, which I'm sure you don't support? What should the response be?
Well, what we need to do is we need to figure out a way to, like I stated, to protect our communities, but also figure out a way to make immigration legal status in our country, because that's what we need to do. We need to get legal status here. We need to help people get their documentation so we don't have these issues as we have right now. Mm-hmm. And we've been missing the mark a lot. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that we really need to focus on moving forward, is how do we fix our immigration policies here in the United States.
Who do you believe authorities will be targeting next? Do you look at this as kind of going in waves, going after what they describe as criminal migrants at this point? Who else do you expect them to be targeting?
Well, President Trump has a quota to give back to the folks that voted for him. So I think you're going to see a lot of soft targets, unfortunately, like I said earlier. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately see them looking at I-9 verification forms going into a lot of places of business where there's a lot of folks that may have document issues, but again, they're soft targets because you have to reach that quota, and you're not going to just get on quote unquote focusing on convicted criminals. You're going to start looking at other folks, and again, that's where the fear is law-abiding people that live in our country that unfortunately are going to have to deal with this. So that's my biggest fear, and that's a lot of my colleagues in the Senate and the House here in Illinois, and our local officials are trying to figure out what's going to be our next target. And I think that's what's going to happen, is that unfortunately soft targets are going to deal with this issue.
Well, Javier Cervantes, you're welcome to come back and discuss as we see this play out further. We do appreciate you taking the time today.